I go into a profound acceptance that one day it's most likely that she'll be here on the planet and I won't be. So I'm spending the rest of my life building a fortress based on her interests and the person that she is. We are all likely aware that the diagnosis of autism in children is increasing. This gives us reason for concern, and rightfully so. But something that's often overlooked is that children with autism grow up and become adults with autism, adults who are no less deserving of our concern. We need to appreciate their challenges so that we can develop solutions that are meaningful for all persons with autism.
For a long time now, people have talked about children with autism, and there's been considerable emphasis on early intervention. But what it forgets is that these children are all going to live to be 80, 90 years old. They're going to be spending 60 years of their lives as adults. And we haven't planned for them to be older children, teenagers, or adults.
At one end of the spectrum are people who may not communicate using speech. They may struggle with daily living and processing sensory information. They may also have other conditions, such as mental retardation or a seizure disorder. This is severe autism.
You know, early on, when a little child's having a tantrum, people wonder, like, what happened? What'd that parent do? Or why is that kid out of control? If I go out with Tariq now at 28 and he grabs somebody's popcorn, and by the way, this does happen, it's embarrassing. People can understand that there's something wrong, but it doesn't make it comfortable.
I was 4 years old in 1957.
And that's when you went into the hospital for the first time?
For the first time. I was admitted to the little children's unit of the main WPIC.
And you stayed for how long?
5 years and 2 months.
And at the end of that time, were you having fewer temper tantrums?
Yes. Then they caught up to me again when I was 15.
On the other end, we have people with autism and above average IQ scores, but they still have autism.
Like in my case, I've had a lot of successes in my life. I've done really well in college. I had a 3.96 GPA in undergrad. I'm in grad school now. I've advocated for other people out there on the spectrum. I've had some success in the last few years since I've been in college with making friendships. But I also have a lot of challenges that people may not see with fitting in with the sensory system, kind of the way my senses kind of overloading me kind of at times, with anxiety and depression and low self-esteem.
The spectrum is a lifespan issue. Even though you may have the diagnosis early on in life, it will not leave.
Well, I'm autistic and I was diagnosed at 2.5 at an early stage of development. It's interesting. Ups and downs, typical, you know. It's hard being me when I'm angry, but it's easy when I really straighten up.
For younger learners with autism, the system basically is pretty responsive. You are guaranteed an education. You're guaranteed a place to go. You have an individualized education program. Unfortunately, at the end of your 21st year, there is no similar legislation to support you into your adulthood. So oftentimes, families hit that graduation age, whether it's 17 or 18 for that child who's graduating on grade level out of high school, or the end of their 21st year for someone who has more intensive needs. And they discover that they've sort of come to a chasm where all those services that were deemed essential and were essential now no longer exist. And now, Johnny, who was going to school at least 5 days a week, 249 days a year, is now sitting home that same amount of time because the supports and services aren't there.
The social environment of teenagers is very complex. And so these children get more and more lost, more ostracized, more picked on.
I didn't realize at the time in high school that there are a lot of cliques. There are the jocks, the brains.
A lot of people were mostly mean to me in school, and maybe I just thought they were mean, I don't know.
I know sometimes some people like to get on my case. Get on my goat, that is.
I was bullied and teased and picked on and rejected for a lot of my life. I mean, basically about 18, 19 years of my life. I'm 27 right now.
They still need social skills instruction. If somebody on the spectrum could learn social skills just by being exposed to social skills, they wouldn't be on the spectrum. That's definitional.
And so I had a lot of those challenges, and a lot of people say, look at me, talk to me, and they make certain assumptions that, I'm this, super person who just kind of, solves kind of everything out there.
They think just because I'm high function autistic that I know how to do everything, and I know everything, and they think that there's nothing wrong with me. They look at me, just because they look at me, they see if I know how to take buses or go on trips or anything, that they think I know how to do everything in the world, but that's not necessarily true.
We shouldn't oversimplify the needs of individuals with autism. Their needs are very complex and differ from person to person.
The important thing I had to learn was hard work didn't cure this. Hard work does a lot of good things, and you can solve a lot of problems. I think the biggest thing, the most profound thing my son taught me was hard work doesn't work all the time. As hard as I would work, he was still autistic. And I couldn't cure him. I couldn't even make a dent in the autism. I could learn to understand him. I could learn to enjoy him at times. I could love him as much as ever, but I couldn't change his fundamental condition. And that was hard to accept.
The biggest challenge of having an adult is your lifestyle is like the lifestyles of younger families, both in financial resource and energy. When you have a young child, that child takes a lot of time and energy. And that's fine when you're young and you have it. But when you're in your 50s and you're still picking clothes in the morning and teaching them basics like how to tell time and managing them, trying to navigate their day for them every minute, it's not any different than having a 2-year-old around.
Well, I think the new wave of autism is beginning to hit adult programming and the community. We're seeing it now mostly in transition services, or at the end of their school years coming into the community, requiring more services and more planning.
Truth be told, I don't know yet. I don't know what jobs I don't really have any preference at this point. I'll have to wait and see what happens as I get older. For all we know, something may spark to mind, though at this point I seriously doubt it. Not to say it won't happen, though.
So this bulk of kids is on the brink of entering services, or the need for services, and the system really is not set up to handle those kids. And a lot of us in the field are very concerned about that.
I'm all kinds of people inside. I just don't even know where to find them. I'm working on it.
And what do you do for them?
For them is that I have doing some mailing and stuff, which folding the papers and putting them in the mail.
Do you help a lot in the office?
Yes, and doing some organizing, and I make some copies.
Didn't you train a couple people too? You helped a couple other people learn what you were doing?
Yeah, I sometimes help them. I help them sometimes, but sometimes I do it by myself. I work in an office with Miss Matrice now.
Let us take the steps necessary to truly understand individuals with autism. Life is often not what it seems.
I just find just living life just to be as hard as, taking a test.
The biggest challenge for us is just understanding often by the population, understanding by the community, kind of learning about us, learning that, say, how we behave kind of at times may not necessarily communicate, how we're thinking and how we're interacting with the world, and how hard it is for us to fit in.
Basically, my whole life's a roller coaster. There's ups and downs, and for me, it's just really hard for me just to, find a basic structure in my day and how I can apply that.
But the fact of the matter is, like the rest of us, people with autism grow up. They grow up to be teenagers, and they grow up to be adults, and eventually a whole cohort that we now know today are going to grow up to be senior citizens. And I think that's going to present us with a whole new set of challenges about how to best support people with autism spectrum disorders. But in some ways, it's also a good challenge, because it forces us to look at them really as people first, and not just as people with this particular disability label. So what does John Jones need as he grows up? And what does, Susie Bevins need when she grows up? As opposed to, what do adults with autism need?
And I do think funny things, like walk out of my shoe and do funny things. So I guess some people take to me that way and like to be around me because of that. And because I'm different. Some other people, like, I don't want to say names and stuff, in bowling tournaments, will punch me in the back once and stuff, and yells at me and tells me off for no reason at all. Because I'm different, because then they can say stuff to me, I won't say things back.
If I wasn't in Ken's life and wasn't providing the services that I am providing to him, he would pretty much be depending on just about anybody who comes in contact with him. He wouldn't be able to go to the grocery store to get his own food without people looking at him as if he's an alien. He would have a hard time coping with different situations. There wouldn't be people there that he could depend on to do things and be there for him and listen to him and help him out, basically being his advocate, because he doesn't know how to express himself like other people can.
Many adults with autism are capable and want to work. If given a real chance, many will prove they are efficient, reliable, and invaluable employees.
Well, the reason that you would want to employ someone on the spectrum, there are a lot of benefits. The biggest benefits is that they are very productive individuals. They learn a job, they will complete the job and see it through completion.
Sunoco A+, Dairy Mart, Butcher Shop, Baked Bread Store, Frank's Deli.
Life skills will get you through your life better than academics will. You can have all the academics in the world, but unless you can then utilize them in a functional way, you can get to a job, you can work as part of a team, you can dress yourself, you can shower yourself, you can do all this other stuff. Being able to factor a binomial equation really isn't going to help you.
Here's what's really important, and I think a lot of people need to understand this. Until Brian came to work for Cleveland Printing Company, everyone in the plant that knew about it had this stunned mullet look on their face, like, what are we getting ourselves into? Now that Brian's been working for us, almost immediately when Brian came to work for us, we all realized that, we all jumped the gun.
If I give him one task and I show him one time, he'll do it over and over the same way, perfectly every time.
Well, it's, you just have to stand there, make sure it doesn't jam up on you, paper flies around, stuff like that, and making sure it's all coming out exactly how it's supposed to, which is perfect.
Well, I knew he was a little different. That's probably the best way to describe Kenny. I do know that some people, when they meet him and talk to him, think he's stupid, but he's far from that. And I tell everybody that. I said he's very smart. He knows a lot more than he likes you to think he knows. And in fact, he'll act dumb at times, mostly for attention, mostly for a reaction. Those are the two things I would say about Kenny are primary in his life. You know, he loves to see people's reactions to the crazy things that he does, and he's always looking for some type of attention.
When I order supplies, we might have, say, 40 to 50 boxes of supplies that actually come in, office supplies. Kenny will go and take all of those and put them into their spots where they belong. He doesn't even have to keep track by looking at the invoice. He will go and empty all those boxes, come back out, and he knows if something's missing or not.
Many people with autism are very interested in engaging with the world around them. They just have to do it on their terms. And so it's our job to figure out what those terms are, and then also to teach the world around them. You know, if we look at people with physical disabilities, you know, we don't say to someone who uses a wheelchair, well, we'll hire you once you learn to walk. We say, you know, yeah, we'll hire you and we'll give you a higher desk and we'll make sure that you have a handicapped parking space and we'll make sure that there's a curb cut in front of the building so that you can get in. You know, but then we look to people who have neurological disorders, including autism, and we say, well, maybe he's hireable if he could talk, or maybe he's hireable if he didn't rock so much, or maybe he's hireable if he didn't ask so many questions. It's a bit of a double standard, if you ask me. I think we need to start looking at this issue of how do we best accommodate people as they are, as opposed to continually setting a new bar for them to jump over in order to be accepted as an employee, a colleague, a friend, a neighbor, or so on.
Okay, so we're going through yogurt today. Perfect. Let's come on up and take a look. I'm gonna walk the freezers after you take this up to take a look at the dates in the pizza. Everybody has their quirks. Andrew is definitely a little bit quirky. I would just say the biggest thing that he is a perfectionist, and that is definitely appreciated by us.
I go into places like Target or I go into other businesses, and basically once I have a full understanding of the person I'm job developing for, I then approach the company trying to see if there is a good fit for that individual at that company. You have to have a really good understanding of the person's capabilities and a good understanding of what the job entails to know if that job would suit the individual. There are challenges. The biggest challenge is getting a company to open their doors, open their eyes, get to see that people that have disabilities have capabilities. That's, I guess, my biggest challenge. I guess if I had to say one thing to them, I would say they should keep an open mind. The people that I bring them want to work. These people will not miss days. They are not going to be late because it's really important to them to be on time. These are things that matter to them. Working and having a reason to be. It is so huge to them that you have a better employee than you might even imagine.
As an employer, you have to be patient, because particularly with a person with autism, you know, it ranges from here to here, and you don't know what you have until you experience it. I know that him coming out of that non-communicative shell that he was in, you know, let's say 2 years ago now, I know there's a degree of success there. What I would like to see for Dave, and this is just me, and I'd like to be able to see him be gainfully employed and productive like I would anyone else. Is that going to be Dave's eventuality? I don't know. But I'm willing to invest the time, money, and energy in doing everything we can to give him that opportunity.
Very often, meaningful achievements for persons with autism are realized because of the perseverance and willing sacrifices of family members and support staff.
You know, there's a lot of great people that have worked with Tariq and that work with people like him. And one of the things that I constantly experienced and other families constantly experience is there's a lot of turnover with the staff. They leave to go to, they're going to school, they're trying to get better jobs, and as they want to and need to support their families. And the pay that people get to do this work, which is very difficult, is not enough to sustain a family.
Well, he knows how to spend money.
That's the big time spenders.
Yeah, he has a payee, so I'm kind of the go-between with him and the payee. Any bills he has, I try to make sure that they get to the payee, and that, or if they don't need to be paid, if they're, you know, it's just a matter of insurance, then I can try to get in there before they send it to collections, which happens.
I came into Mark's life about 7 or 8 years ago when the family was looking for some job training support, and so we were able to help Mark with a job at Hershey Park and up at Hershey at the headquarters. And he just took off from there. As the years went on, it grew into some rehabilitation support, some social skills out in the community, learning to cook and do laundry on his own, which eventually evolved into him wanting to move into an apartment of his own.
My job with Cheryl is a habit and art teacher. And what I do as a habit is I help Cheryl with things in the outside world, interactions with individuals, problems with friends, just the dynamics of life. I can kind of coach her in some ways is to lessen certain anxieties. For instance, if you say that you're going to do something at a particular time, or if you've made an arrangement, or if you kept a promise, or you're going to have a promise, if you don't keep that promise, it's critical.
This is my snow white dove, and I love to do birds because I feel one with nature and free with nature, and express my emotions when I do art. And I love to make colorful paintings, and this is pastel.
John is 77 years old. He's autism and he's very active. He likes to move around. He does not speak at all, but he does make noise. And you try to figure out what sound is he making. He will do just about everything you ask him. He understands everything you ask him to do.
John. Here. Here. Thank you.
The challenge of finding suitable living arrangements for adults with autism will be with us for years. To be effective, we must make responsible and informed decisions based on the individual's needs and preferences.
So by the time he was going on 9, and I hadn't slept through the night in about 8 years, it was just time to face his need for round-the-clock care. And that was excruciating. That was the hardest thing I've ever had to wrestle with.
There's 2 places that adults usually live. Some remain at home with parents, but others go into the community and live in some form of group home or residential placement, and it could be a nursing home. A few are in state hospitals.
At about 8 months, Beth started headbanging and started a mild form of self-abuse. And that self-abuse got continually worse over time. When Beth was at her height of self-abuse, we doctored with our family pediatrician when he recommended that we should visit the developmental clinic. We tried to get some help through the public systems, and we were told in kind of in a laughing manner that you got to be kidding, she's far too abusive and far too disruptive for us to do anything with, and we have no program for her. The only thing we can suggest to you is that you place her in a state facility. When Beth went to Polk, it was obviously a very traumatic thing for us and our family. With relatives and friends, we would hear comments like, you know, if it was my child, I would never do that, and things like that. Of course, they were not living with the 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week upheaval in their life that we were living with. From those early days at Polk, when Beth went there and there were 3,200 people, you know, state facilities did not have a great reputation. They were considered to be custodial facilities. And I've seen that evolve over the years to something that's not anything near that today. We've lived through all those changes, and we've seen people who should not have been there be taken out. And what remains at Polk are the difficult cases. In my opinion, it probably is better for those people than life would be in the community.
It is critical that we find the right fit for these individuals. But housing and living in the community is going to be a challenge all through life. It's just something that won't go away. It's there. Something as simple, believe it or not, as paying the light bill or getting a phone hooked up.
I feel this place has given me a new lease on life. It's made a new man out of me. And it's turned my life around for the better.
When this group matures, this group that's been diagnosed in the last 10 years, and now comes into the community, it's going to put just an unbelievable strain on an already strained situation. We need in the community then to be a lot more receptive to people who have different needs, may have different behaviors than we're used to, and so it's kind of a double-sided endeavor here. The autism boom is going to change society.
People on the spectrum who would love to live in the city, they're used to the city, there should be city living options. There's others, they're growing up around Hershey or in Adams County, and the city would terrify them and they'd be overstimulated. They need community living options near where they are.
It is very important for us to know or understand that somebody on the spectrum has the same wishes, hopes, and dreams that we have.
Now, this is indeed a legislative issue that we do need to look, how do we better support? What services do need to be there? How do we fund the services for these individuals? But it's also a systems issue. We really need to, within the field of special education and applied behavior analysis, one of the instructional components of good special education, we need to get much better at what we're doing in terms of transition planning. We need to make sure that when kids graduate, they do have a set of skills that will work for them post 21. Okay? It's not enough to just be able to do a math worksheet, okay, if you can't cross the road.
It was always the case that services were hard to access, and with autism, some kids are functioning in a large percentage within the range of mental retardation, but increasingly, there's more children being diagnosed that function beyond that range. So to access a lot of services, kids have still needed the MR diagnosis, which some don't have, and which some parents don't want their kids to have because they're hoping the child functions higher or has the potential to function higher. Kids with autism don't do well on these kinds of tests. So, and nobody wants that label. So that label itself has been a barrier to services.
After that has to come the group of people that understand autism. A lot of people with autism are not difficult to support or work with if you understand autism. But it's sort of like if you're working with somebody that's blind and you don't know they're blind, and you walk down the street with them and you let them walk into a lamp post. And then you keep doing it, because you never figure out they can't see. Oh, let's go for a walk in the forest. And you let them walk into the river and the trees and down the ravine. And the worst part is the person taking them never figures it out. And then the person that's blind gets angry and upset and hurt and crying, and you fix it by giving them medication so they don't cry anymore. You just still keep walking them into trees, So.
We have much to do as citizens, as employers, co-workers, landlords, family, and friends. Because we are responsible stewards of our communities, it's to everyone's advantage to include adults with autism into society. Understanding is the first step toward effective solutions.
Continue to show as much compassion as possible. Give us credence to the old saying, don't judge a book by its cover.